Good morning. I'm Marie, and this is the Appleton Museum of Art Sketch It. We're going to do two different activities. One is going to be a contour drawing. Now, if you don't know what a contour line drawing means, it means basically an outline. A contour line is the outline of an object. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, the interesting thing about this is I'm going to ask you to not pick up your pencil off the paper once you start drawing. It's probably going to be a hard thing for you to do, but I want you to try it because it actually can be kind of fun. Please don't expect these drawings to be beautiful. They will not. But the whole idea of this is to train your eye to look at something, which will help you in the next project that we do. But your eye needs to be trained to look at all the little details and look around the edges of things. And as you know, your pencil goes around, your eye goes around the object. When you play a video game and you have the controls in your hands, you are not watching the controls. You are watching the screen, and you are reacting to what you're seeing. So really what I'm asking you to do is on paper, react to what you're seeing. And you're going to be looking at your thumb. That's the one drawing that we are going to do. I have this scissors in front of me though, because I wanted to show you a contour drawing. Let's say if I started looking at this, I'm with my eye. Okay, just watch for a minute. And I'm going to do this. I'm not going to draw this whole thing right here, but I am going to start right in this circle here. And I'm not looking at my paper. I am looking at my scissors, and I know there's a circle here. But see, I'm going to come around, and now I'm going to come down this line. So I'm down here, and I know there's that little zigzag, this little slanted line, but I'm going to come over here where the scissors is open. And then I'm going to come all the way down to the point of the scissors. Now I'm doing this a little bit quick just to show you what I mean. So I'm at the point of this scissors, and I'm going to come back slanted line, and I'm going to come back here. I'm not looking at my paper. I have no idea really where I am. And I am going to come to the red part of the scissors, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to come around again. Now, I have to come back down this line. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to start doing this one. This comes down straight, and it comes around, and it comes back down, and it goes underneath that top one, but I can't pick my scissors up, so I just have to go across it. So I'm going to come down here to my point of my scissors and come back up, and I'm going to stop. And okay, it does look like a scissors, maybe not the best scissors, but the whole idea is for you to train your eye to follow the object, the outline of the object, the contour line of the object. I'm not looking at my paper when I'm doing this. I'm looking at the object. Sometimes we'll call it a blind contour because I'm not looking at my drawing. I'm just looking at the object. It's going to be very hard for you not to look at your drawing. And I know you're going to look at your drawing. I know you are, because I do it too. It's just natural. You just kind of do it. But the biggest thing is, please don't pick up your pencil. That's the biggest thing. Try not to pick up your pencil. And obviously, if you can't pick up your pencil, you can't use an eraser. And this is going to help you maybe understand a little bit more when I start talking about the eagle, because there are going to be lots of relationships to the parts of the eagle to help you draw that eagle. And I know you're going to come out with a beautiful drawing. Okay, so you may want to watch it first. And I think we may try this a couple of times, but I'm going to start right in here, and I can see this little wrinkle here. So I'm going to start here. And I am to do this much slower because I am really trying to follow my pencil with my eyes. Now I'm up around my knuckles, so I can see there's that line here, and it curves because my finger is round. And then there's another one here, And then I'm going to come up a little bit, and I've got the tip of my thumb, but I'm going to come in because I want to make my fingernails. So I've got to go around again. And then I'm going to come down, and my thumb kind of curves in, and then it curves out. And I see, because of the way my thumb is bent, I'm coming way down the bottom here. Okay, interesting thumb. You want to try it? Let's do it again. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to start with this knuckle right in here, and I'm going to start again. And it's going to be really hard to not look at your paper. And so I'm coming up to where that joint is, and I know I have those wrinkles where the skin, because your joint, you have to be able to bend that knuckle, and then it's going to come up. I'm going to come around for my thumb, and then I'm going to back in because I know there's a fingernail here. And I'm going to come down. See, I think this is where my knuckle lines are. And then this curves in, and it curves out, and I have some wrinkles in my skin. And I actually think that's a little bit better than my first one. Your whole hand is just way too hard. If you wanted to, you could try, your fingers, and you can try it turned a different way. So I've done this, the thumb up and around, and I think I'm going to turn my thumb. Actually, I'm going to put it down on the paper so I can see this contour here. All right, I am going to start right in here. So I'm going to do this because that's that line right here. All right, and I won't pick up my pencil anymore. I am going to pick up my pencil now because I just want to show you something. I'm right here. That line is right here, and I'm going to come across and down because I want to make sure my thumb looks round. So see, this is going to come across and it's going to go down, but I'm going to come back up on that same line because I don't want to pick up my pencil. So then I can see this. I can see. I also see my fingernail in here. And I'm just trying to follow that same line. And then my thumb comes out. And I know I have some lines in here from my skin. And it's going to come down. And then I have another knuckle in here. And then down from my hand. Actually, look at, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. If I traced my thumb that I just drew, that's not that bad. Okay, do you think you're working on training your eyes? Because I would like to move on to the eagle. And here's my eagle, and here's my drawing. Now, I drew, mine is a little bit bigger than this head. And obviously, yours is not going to be exactly that exact same size because we all draw differently. But what I'm going to talk about is the relationship of the parts of the eagle, the eye, the beak, to try and get them in the correct positions on your drawing. I'm going to draw on top of this right now with a Sharpie so you can see better what I'm going to be talking about when we start drawing. I'm actually going to have you center on the eye at first when we draw this. And when I talk about relationships and noticing and seeing things, you know that there's a pupil in your eye. You have one on the outside edge of this pupil. If I drew a straight line down, I am going to find the end of that eagle's beak from the top of the eye. And I know there are feathers over the top of the eye, but from the top of the eye, if I draw a line out here, I'm almost to the top of the beak. So if I put the eye in here first, and if I look to my left, I have a pretty good idea where to start my beak. From the middle of this eye, I draw a line, and I find his nostril where he's breathing. From the bottom of the eye, okay, there's the bottom. So I know the nostril is in this area. I'm going to continue this line down just a little bit. Look, here's the bottom of the beak. So if I know where his mouth ends a little bit further down, that's where his beak is going to end. And then we have a lot of space back here for the back of his head. There's a lot of white, and I'll help you draw that in. I'm going to use a regular pencil, and this one was done in regular pencil except for the beak. I used colored pencils and a little bit on the eye, but all of the rest of this shading was done with a regular pencil. And you can do that if you want to. You can add brown and black if you want to use colored pencils for feathers in most of his body. Up in here, we're just going to use regular pencil because we don't do a lot of shading. We just do a little bit to give the illusion of feathers. I want you to watch first what I'm going to do. Then you can start drawing with me. But I want you to first just give me a minute to start this. I'm going to draw with a black pencil so you guys can see better. All right. So I am going to start with the eye, and I'm just drawing that black outline around the eye right now. And I'm going to draw that pupil in. All right, pick a spot almost in the middle of your paper, and I want you to draw that eye and draw the pupil. I really want to use a regular pencil if I can, because if I need to erase, it's much easier to erase a regular pencil than it is to erase a colored pencil. So if I come down from the eye, maybe like a thumb, a thumb or a finger. If I come down from that middle of that eye, I'm going to put a mark here. I know that this is the end of my beak. So I'm just going to mark that in there. Let's go back up because I want to draw this beak. That's important to get this whole thing in here. So there's the end of the beak. Let's go back up to the top of the eye, and very lightly, you want to draw a line straight across. Okay, I want you to just draw very lightly because we're going to erase that line. You know what? I drew a very light line across, and I'm going to say for me, and it might be, I have 3 fingers. It might be 4 for you guys. Depends on how big your fingers are. But at the end of my fingers here, and I'm just going to move my pencil, I'm going to put a dot here. This is going to be the top of my beak. What I'm doing here is I'm putting points in here for relationships so then I can go back and I can complete this whole beak. So I have the eye, end of the mouth, top of the beak. Let's go back. That line came straight down to the end of the mouth. And then remember I said it comes down just a little bit further, and it's going to line up with the tip of the beak. So I'm going to say this is probably another finger from the end of the mouth, come down. I'm going to make a little dot here. I can go back and erase that later. And I'm going to make a line very lightly straight over. So I know this is where my beak has to end on that line over here someplace. This, oh, you know what? 5, maybe, yeah. I would say for me, like 4.5 fingers, probably you guys 5 fingers, and put a dot. Let's go back up here. Let's put the beak in. This is the top of my beak. And look, this has got to curve down to that dot. So you are, from here, you're curving down to that dot. Now we're going to make the rest of that, the top part of that beak. You're going to come up. You're going to come up, see, just a little bit and curve in. You're going to come up, curve in and back to where the other dot for the end of the mouth. All right. Okay. If you look at your eagle picture, okay, we just made this line. There is the bottom part of his beak. There's just a little part, the bottom of his mouth, his beak. I'm just going to add that in and have it just come right back up. Whoops. And I'm going to erase that. Actually, it doesn't come right back up. The bottom part of his beak is, I'm going to end it right here because it actually kind of disappears into his feathers. See the bottom part of his beak, and then it just disappears into the feathers. But we do have this line, you know, for where his mouth, his beak is going to open. Okay, I just want to go back and get rid of some of these extra lines that I don't need anymore. I just want to clean this up just a little bit. And I'm going to get rid of this line that comes down from his eye. So I have my eye. And if you look at your picture, this one, I've got everything drawn all over it, but you don't actually see the top of the eye because of those feathers. So you know where the top of your beak is. Here's the top of your eye. I'm going to just draw a curve. This is a very gentle curve over to the top of his beak. So this is my eye. Remember, we didn't draw the top of it. So because there are feathers going across here. So you can actually draw maybe like a straight line across that eye, but then I'm going to curve it up to the beak, the top of the beak. I'm going to erase a little bit of that because now this is where the top of his head starts, right in here. Eventually, I'm going to lighten up these lines a little bit. We'll put this in. From here, let's put the top of the head in. I can see where the feathers start. And actually, I can see a couple of little zigzaggy things here. Remember, these are feathers. It's not a solid line like a hat on the top of his head. So, and I'm going to draw this darker so you can see it. And then I'm going to go back later and erase it a little bit. I can see feathers that kind of go, you know, something like this. And the top of my head, probably, maybe about 2 fingers from the eye, maybe about 2 fingers for me. So I'm going to come across here and I'm going to draw the top of the head. And I'm probably about here. You have a lot of space between the eye and the back of the head. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4.5 of my fingers to the back of his head. If I took my index finger, I have full length of my index finger, and my finger is much longer than yours. So if I were to do this, let's see, I'm going to do this with my other hand. I'm probably back here someplace. So I'm probably like back in here someplace for the back of his head. And I'm just going to do loose lines back here because these are feathers. I do like zigzag feathers. The top of his head, right in the front here, there were tiny ones. And as you go across the top of the head, maybe just close ones. But then when you get to the back of the head, you may want to just do bigger ones because those are all feathers coming down here. Those are all different feathers. Put this. And sometimes, you know, I said I did zigzag lines. Sometimes I'll just do lines. Sometimes I've done zigzags, like in and out, just in and out. But other times I'll do it right on top of here. See, I can do little zigzags in and out, but other times you can just do lines and add some lines. Don't do a lot in here right now. We're just kind of concentrating on the contour, let's say, of this head. All right, I'll do this in dark so you can kind of see better. All right, so there's his head. I'll put a couple of the little feathers here, and I'm just going to draw some zigzags for the feathers on the top of his head. I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on that. And then we're going to go back to the front underneath his beak so we can put in. Remember, the nostril is from the middle of the eye across, and it's almost under the top of that beak. It's a little bit forward, and it's an oval and it's turned sideways. We're going to keep working on this. And as you do this, if there are lines that you don't need anymore, just take those out. All right, let's go back right underneath here, his beak, because I want to put these little bits of feathers in and then the rest of his neck feathers. If you look at these, they are basically zigzags, up and down, up and down. And they start about the middle of his beak out here, almost right. If you look right underneath his nostril. That's where those feathers start, right underneath his nostril. So I'm going to start right there. And I'm going to put just little, I'll do it with the black pencil, little lines for zigzags. These are going to be his feathers. I'm doing, and I'm coming back. I'm coming back in here. Don't worry about down here yet. I'm going to go, these are all the feathers going towards the back of his mouth, basically. And I'm just going to do, and see, there are little tiny, tiny ones up around the end of his mouth. But I'm just going to do some lines. That's it. When I did the top, I did those little zigzags, but right in the front of his head, he's got like little tiny spiky things here. And let's do it over here. Here's his beak. There's the top of his beak right here. So I'm going to just do like little in and out, like little spikes almost. But then if you look here, it gets kind of almost like flat. So then I'm just going to just do little tiny lines. And I'm coming across. I'm coming across here. And then when I get towards the back, this is where I might see right in here, I can make some bigger zigzags. Or you can just make some lines. Just make some bigger zigzags, because we're going to use those zigzags to do some shading that we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah, just think like loose feathers, you know, in, out, in, out. That's a good way to describe that. Those feathers are all tiny little lines growing. So I'm going to go back over to the front underneath. And I just want to draw, this part. I'm going to draw the bottom part of his white head. And you can see this is definitely in and out, in and out. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to start here. It comes down kind of slanted. And I'm just going to go in and out. And it comes down long. And I'm just doing, like, as you can see, I'm just doing in and out. And I'm getting to this point here where it's going to come down long, because I'm getting towards the back of his head. So this is going to, and they start to curve this way. They start to curve this way. So my in and out, and I'm just going to curve this into the back of the head. Don't worry about any shading right now. You just want to get that bottom edge of the white area of his head, and that's what distinguishes him or her as a bald eagle. You guys have the outline, the contour drawing. Oh, you do have some stuff inside here of a bald eagle. What I want to do now is let's work on that eye, because it's really awesome. So I'm going to put this down. I'm going to switch because I have so many black lines here. I want to go back to this one here. You did that black outline, right? And we did the black pupil. If you look closely, and I'm going to use my colored, my yellow pencil right here, you have a yellow outline around his eye or her eye. So I'm going to draw, actually, I don't want it to be so bright. I'm going to actually try and tone that down with a little bit of orange. So if you want to use colored pencils, but you do not have to use colored pencils, you could just do that extra part of the eye that I'm saying is yellow. You could just do it with an outline. So there's a nice black section around the right-hand side of that eyeball. Remember we drew that line here from the top of the eye? I want you to make it look like feathers. I just want you to draw some in and out lines to make it look like feathers and just kind of bring it back. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw lines. The feathers grow up. It's very hard to see because this is white, but the feathers are growing from the end of the beak. They grow this way. And I'm just going to draw these long lines, but this is the direction that those feathers grow. So very close to the beak, they're tiny. They're tiny little lines. And that's what I'm just going to put in. I'm going to put in tiny little lines and just put a few because they're growing. They're growing this way. When they get to the eyebrow, though, they're kind of slumped down over that eye. I've got some crisscross lines going on here. Excuse me, I'm going to erase some of my extra lines that I don't need anymore. Do you see that real shadow? Because that eyebrow, you lower your eyebrows because maybe you're mad or something. That's kind of what this looks like. It has created a shadow right across the top of the eye. So I'm going to put that in with my pencil, just a little bit of shading, because right now his eye looks like way too wide open. Remember when we used our pencil very lightly in one direction for shading? I am going to shade across that eye. I'm going to create that shadow in there. I'm going to keep going back and forth. I want to get that shadow over the eye. And I want you to look at your picture and see how much shading. I'm going to use my black pencil a little bit here because I made such a dark eyeball or pupil. I think I need to use my black pencil for some of that shading. I'm going to use it very lightly out here, but then I'm going to press a little bit harder going across the eye. And honestly, I'm going to take a little bit of this out because I think I did a little too much out here. Let's put in the end of that beak. Remember, this is the mouth. That's where the mouth ends. So you've got feathers, and you can't really see a line in here for the end of the beak. If this is kind of a yellow, we can't see this. It's all covered with feathers, but I know it's there. So what I want to do is I'm just going to make tiny lines as if the feathers, because I can see those feathers, if I create those tiny lines, I'm just making all kinds of tiny lines underneath the eye in that shaded area, but I'm making all these lines down to the end of the mouth. And I have just created the end of the beak by making the lines for the feathers. Any of the feathers around the eye are going to be very, very tiny. And then if you look closely at this picture, and it is hard to see, but the feathers get much bigger as they get away from the face. But these are tiny, tiny. And then as they go out, and that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to make tiny, tiny lines right under the eye, all the way around the eye. I'm making tiny, tiny lines. And then I'm going to go back and make a second row. And they're just going to keep coming out from the eye. Let's make that shadow in his feathers. So my tiny lines from the top, I'm going to come out. So I'm going to come out. There's that line right here. And I'm going to bring feathers, tiny lines out to that.
right now, that's where I'm going to stop because I don't want to shade all of this in. I wanted you to have a nice white head.
And the same thing around the end of his beak, tiny, tiny lines. That's underneath his mouth, tiny, tiny lines, and just kind of blend, bring them down into those larger zigzags that we did. And that's all I'm going to do around his mouth here. If you want to color this beak, I will show you how we can do that. I have a yellow pencil, an orange pencil, and a white pencil. I actually even have a peachy colored pencil. I don't have the colors to really match this, and it's going to be very hard for you to do that. But we can try and do this as best as we can. But right now, let's just work on the rest of these feathers. You can see shadow area underneath the feathers. And that's what's going to help you make the white area show up. So I actually want you to stop drawing right now, and I want you to watch me. I'm going to use my black pencil so you can see better. In order to make some of those look really white, I'm going to, let's do a couple in here. So I'm going to draw that feather, but I'm not going to color the feather. I am going to color around on the outside of it. I'm just going to shade in on the outside of it. So if I make a line here, I'm just going to do a little shading. There's a dark line, and I'm just going to shade that. Remember, dark to medium to light. You just want to do a little shading. Let's come out here. I've got some out here. I'm just going to do a little shading next to that dark line. Down in here, or even on the outside edge, you're going to shade on the outside of those zigzags. So here's a zigzag here. Here's a couple of zigzags. I'm going to shade in between them. What I'm actually doing is creating the rest of his body. So I'm actually shading in between. So by shading around those zigzags, I'm making those areas appear to be nice and white. I wouldn't do too much in here. I've got another line here. Okay, let's just do a little bit of shading. Down in here, he does have shadows underneath here. So I did these. Let's just do some shading around those zigzags. And I'm just going to do, this is like that medium tone, that medium value that we worked on the other day. Just a little bit. Do you see that if I go around those zigzags, this starts to show up as white? There's a white area. Okay, why don't you start trying some of this? You don't need a lot of shading. You don't want a lot because his head is white. But you do need to show that it's white, so we shade around some of those. I just want to get in some of his body feathers here. I want to curve this out. When I do this beak, I am going to start by actually coloring this whole thing in a very pale yellow. Do you remember when we did the flamingo beak and we talked about going over it with a white pencil to blend it to make it look hard? You're going to do the same thing here. I want my beak to look very different from my feathers. And now my beak has a black outline on it, so I'm going to do what I can to get rid of that. Now that I've shaded it in yellow, I want to just get rid of some of that dark line. So this is where you go back and you use your eraser. All right, so now it doesn't have such a black line around it. I'm going to start blending in an orange. You remember I said we're never going to get this color correct, but
this beak curves down, and you can see the light area on the top here. There is light shining on that beak right here. So I want this to get darker as it goes down. So I want to give that illusion that it's curving. So I'm going to shade a little bit darker orange. And then remember, a darker, I'm going to go to medium. And then I'm going to lightly, I'm just going across that whole beak. And underneath, the underneath part of his beak, it's not going to get any light on it whatsoever. So I am going to shade that in darker. And then I'm going to just fade that out. And go back and forth with my yellow. I'm going to press harder here. So I'm going to shade this in. But this, like I said, there's no way I'm going to get that same color. So this is where I'm going to use my regular pencil to make it look different. And that's what I did in here. I used my regular drawing pencil to give that dark area and a little bit of the dark area underneath the mouth. So in here, I am going to do some shading on top of the orange, using that medium tone that we used. I don't want to press really hard. I don't want it really dark. I just want it a little bit dark. And then I'm just going to blend into the mouth. And I'll do a little bit of shading down here underneath. When you're doing something like this and you don't have the exact colors, you just have to work with what you've got. You know, you just do the best that you can. And you just keep going back over it and back over it. I am going to use my white pencil. I can still see a lot of my lines and my shading with your white pencil. I don't know if you remember, but with that white pencil, I'm pressing really hard. My white pencil tends to just blend everything together. I really want this to look different. So I'm just going to keep going on. I want this to look hard, hard, hard. And I actually might go over a little of that yellow because I want to blend around the eye. I want to blend that yellow and orange. You know what? I might even use my regular pencil because that yellow is really, really bright still. And it's not that bright in the picture. So I'm just going to tone that down a little bit. I hope you guys have added, some of the body down here with either a black pencil, a brown pencil. We can do some shading in here. This is a portrait. So you do have the head, but with a portrait, you do have a portion of the shoulders, the upper body. And I'm going to blend. See, I'm just going around again. I'm going around those zigzags, those in and outs. I could color this right off the paper, but I want to put in some of his body. And I'm coloring again, all in the same direction. You would not do cross hatching here. His feathers all grow in the same direction. So you don't want the chance of seeing any lines going across. It would be like drawing your hair with crossed lines straight across. It would just look very odd because your hair does not grow that way. And so you want to use your pencil in the direction that the natural growth of the feathers. So if you are doing a cat or a dog or any type of animal, you want to consider the direction of the growth of their fur or their hair and use your pencil in that direction. So it looks more natural. And if you want to, I'm just going to do a little bit of brown in here. I used my black pencil, but I'm going to use a little bit of brown in here just to add a little more shading. Not a lot. I don't want a lot. He has a beautiful white head, and I don't want that to get disturbed by any of my other shading. Definitely just want to show that beautiful, majestic head. And I'm just going to put a little bit. And I'll add a little bit here. I did this with my regular pencil, but I'm just going to add a little bit of with the brown in here. Very lightly. See, when I want very, very light, I slow down. And I'm going to shade around here. I'm hardly putting any pressure on my pencil. And again, I'm going to use my pencil in the direction that the feathers would grow. So what do you think of your eagle so far?
If you feel that your eagle is a better drawing than your flamingo on Monday, it very well could be, because you have learned some different techniques and you're growing. So you know what? You may want to go back and try that flamingo again. Take your time with the flamingo and look at relationships. You know, maybe the eye to the beak and different things like we did with the eagle. Or print out another picture, get a picture in a magazine and try. I used to do that all the time. I would take pictures from magazines and draw them, look at them, really look at them. You have to practice. You have to practice and practice and practice. Here's the one that I did today, and here's the one that I did last week. This beak is longer and skinnier. This eye is larger. This head is much longer. So every time you do something, you know, it's never going to be the same. And honestly, you don't want it to be the same. It's when you look at a drawing, look at a picture and you're going to draw it, this is your interpretation. You're not trying to copy that picture exactly. You're never going to be able to copy that picture exactly. Even if you trace it, by the time you color it in, it's never going to be that way. Make it your own. Okay, when I look at these two, I'm not sure which one I like better. I think I like this eye better than this eye. I do like the shading in here. I liked that I used color here. This one I used just pencil. I'm not sure about the beak. Again, this beak is much wider and I think it's shorter, but this whole picture is bigger. I drew this whole thing larger than this one. So I hope you're going to find some other things to draw. Thank you very much for coming to Sketch It at the Appleton Museum of Art. You did some beautiful drawings of eagles. I hope you find some other animals that you would like to draw. So really, thank you very much for coming. See ya.